Brandstorm, the podcast that talks to the people behind America's brands. I'm Dan Trzynski, president of Platypus Advertising and Design.
And I'm Nancy Christopher, PR director at Platypus. Our guest today has been programming radio stations most of his long career in broadcasting. He's programmed almost every format from top 40 and smooth jazz to country and classic rock, and for almost every demo. Please welcome John Sebastian. He's going to talk about his new format for 55-plus listeners, which he believes is the most undervalued, most underappreciated, and in his words, most underexploited demographic in America. It's good to have you with us, John.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And being part of that demographic, thank you.
Yeah.
I am too deep into it.
So your LinkedIn profile describes you as the radio programming mastermind. Can you elaborate about that?
Well, I think I'm not the one that came up with that, thankfully. A better description might be radio programming contrarian. I always did things out of the box, the road less traveled. I didn't do formats the way Billboard magazine or R&R Radio and Records thought I should, or the record companies thought I should. I was definitely a rebel, and I'm currently a rebel. I'm being rebellious in my new idea as well.
What made you different than, say, Billboard?
Well, for instance, when I was doing Top 40, you guys both have a radio background.
Correct.
When I was doing Top 40, I would play, in addition to the hits, I would play things like Cashmere by Led Zeppelin. Is that shocking enough? When I did smooth jazz, I played a bunch of new age and European electric music along with it. And consequently, I had some of the best ratings in the history of that format at the Wave in Los Angeles. When I did classic rock or AOR rock, I created a thing called kick-ass rock and roll that spread across the country. And when I was doing that, I also played Eddie Rabbitt, which isn't exactly kick-ass rock and roll.
No.
When I did country stations at KZLA in Los Angeles and The Wolf, KPLX in Dallas, and The Wolf in Nashville, I not only played the country hits, but I played the Eagles and Bob Seger and Jackson Browne and things that I considered country rock.
Yeah, it's amazing to me, even like when you go to a country concert these days, you can go to a Garth Brooks concert and watch them cover AC/DC, and people go crazy for it. I mean, so
precisely right. And if you go to a Keith Urban or Kenny Chesney concert these days, it's a rock concert. It's exactly like rock concerts used to be, with all the lights and pizzazz that they used to have. When I did my first country station, and it was the biggest one in the country, KZLA in Los Angeles, that's a hell of a start. As I was driving there with my now ex-wife, I said to her, oh my God, what am I doing? I don't even like country.
Yeah, right.
So, but I did what I always do with every new format that I tackle. And that is I engrossed myself in it, educated myself, and found out, wow, there's some really good music here, some incredible lyrics and melodies. And of course, then became a fan, especially with my mix of it, because that's where I'm a mastermind. My mix of music has always been unique, and it breaks a lot of rules. And I think those rules needed to be broken. And therefore, I've influenced these formats to break out of their mold a little bit. I really think that I influenced what country is now by doing what I described to you.
Okay, so tell us a little bit, or what you can, about this new 55-plus format that you've developed, because we all think that we're younger than we are, and and when I always hear 55-plus, I think, oh, geez, music of your life, and Sinatra and Dean Martin stuff, but it's not, because I'm in that demo now.
It's not at all. I have to be really careful, to be honest with you, with too many specifics, because I don't want anybody to emulate it before I can get it on the air.
Okay.
It's only been a matter of weeks that I announced that I'm doing this. So I'm going to tread carefully, so don't take it personally.
No, not a problem.
In fact, even the people that have reached out to me, owners and managers that are interested, I have them sign an NDA before I really go into specifics. So a good way to describe it is, it's certainly unique. There's nothing like it on the air anywhere. There probably has never been anything like it on the air anywhere, because the baby boomer audience is unique because of what we've grown up with. Let me go back in time a little bit with you. This will give away some clues, but it won't be very specific, so bear with me. So I started in radio in 1968. That's 50 years ago. So I didn't start when I was 5. So
that's a long career.
Right.
In 1968, historians have said that 68 and 69 were the best years in music in history. So I was really spoiled right from the beginning. So I started as a disc jockey. In the 70s, I became a program director. I programmed KDWB in Minneapolis and KHJ in Los Angeles, two of the top 40 stations in America, and geared myself to 12 to 24, the boomers of that era. In the 80s, I created a format that I alluded to before, kick-ass rock and roll, AOR rock. I did it at WCOZ in Boston first. It went from a 4 share to a 12.6 in about 9 months. Still the highest rock share in American history in a major market. And from there, that spread to about 25 major stations across the country. So, and at that point, I was doing 18 to 34, which again were the boomers. Then in the later 80s, I was one of the creators of the new age smooth jazz format at the Wave in Los Angeles. There we were dealing with 25 to 54 people. In the early 90s, I did classic rock, again, dealing with 25 to 54. And once again, that's the age of the boomers as it continued to get older. And then in the late 90s and through the 2000s, I did a lot of country stations. Then the demo was 35 to 64, which again, as the boomers got older and I got older, I was again dealing with my demographic. And so when I started seeing all these publications and statistics about boomers, that there's 75 million boomers, only slightly less than millennials, that the boomers have by far the most wealth in America, and yet only 5 to 10% of the marketing is geared towards it. Upscale car dealers are overwhelmingly dealing with boomers. I could go on with these incredible stats. When I started filling myself with that, I had to say to myself, and it's a little egotistical, who would be a better person based on my track record to create the format that doesn't exist now for baby boomers?
Yeah, because if I could borrow words from Neil Diamond, this is the story of your life. You've kind of grown up with this every decade.
Of course, I wasn't thinking about it. It just happened naturally. And that's what it dawned on me. Oh my God, this has to be done, because other than news talk, which obviously gets a lot of 55 plus, there really is no format that is geared towards it. Boomers are more loyal to radio than any other demographic. And that makes sense too, because they grew up with radio.
Sure.
Right. Total sense.
And where millennials and even older than that have basically rejected a lot of radio. And yet that's where the advertising is geared towards. It doesn't make sense. So this just became my cause, that this has to be done. It's obvious that there's millions and millions and millions of dollars that's being untapped with this demographic. So I've kind of given you clues without being specific as to how I came up with this and what I'm doing. Once we get a little further along and working with my first station, I'd be glad to send you a demo that I've created that really would explain it to you.
Yeah, we could do an update. Sure.
Yeah.
So how do you go about marketing a format to a radio station? And what are those challenges like?
Well, it is more challenging in that, and the only reason it's challenging in my mind is because so many of the radio companies, radio groups have so overpaid for their radio stations so that they have such a huge debt service that they can't afford to run radio stations correctly. And part of running a radio station correctly, or anything, as you guys would know as an advertising agency, is by advertising and marketing.
Right.
And so they've got themselves in this dilemma where they can't afford to, in many cases, can't afford to even have disc jockeys. They can't afford to do almost anything other than try to run as many commercials as possible to try to pay their debt service. And I'm only slightly exaggerating. So the people that are going to first jump on this are not going to be the big three companies, I'm afraid. It's going to be an independent company that doesn't have a debt service that probably has their stations paid off, that is willing to do radio the way it's always been done. That's not to say we're not going to use social networking, absolutely. Also billboards and some cable television, which is probably what we could afford at this point, and use a conglomeration of those things to get the word out. And of course, here's my philosophy around all that. You only need a modicum of that, because when you do something so unique, like I've done my whole career and I'm doing with this format, word of mouth is the best advertising. So this other advertising is really just to, in my mind, flame the word of mouth.
It would seem like this would be something easy to market because it just makes so much sense. And I do think all of us who are 55 plus, we're not as interested in streaming radio and all the stuff that happens out there. So I would think this would be an easy sell. And we're the ones with the money.
Yeah. And you would think that, but it's an incredibly hard sell.
Sure.
Because, now think of it, Nancy, you just gave away the fact that you're not 30.
Yeah.
But I'll use that as an example. Too many of these decisions are being made by, forgive me, 30-year-olds that don't know the history of radio. They don't know maybe these stats about baby boomers. They don't know that there's so much wealth there that's being untapped and they just look at their list of the ratings and their demos that they're going after, many times 18 to 34, which doesn't make sense in today's world, but that's what too much of it is going towards. And they literally say, oh, we're not going to do something for those old people. I mean, they really have that attitude. So there's going to have to be a tremendous education about that. And I'm so gung-ho about this that when I get my first station, wherever it is, I'm going to move there, at least temporarily, program it myself in person, and go out on sales calls and go to New York and LA and Milwaukee and meet with the advertising agencies to put this stuff in front of them and say, come on, give me a shot. Look at my track record. Forgive the ego again. But this isn't going to be the first time I failed. I continue to break records in every format in every city that I've done. I've either programmed or consulted in literally, people use the word literally too much, literally every major market in America. And with success every single time. I've never failed to improve the ratings of any radio station I've been involved with. So I am the right person to do this. I have come up with something that will resonate with this group. The core is probably 55 to 72, by the way. A lot of 80-year-olds aren't going to like it, although some will. Just like some 45-year-olds will like it too.
Sure.
But the core is going to be about 55 to 72.
I would say my kids, who are in their 20s, they love classic rock.
Yes, exactly. One of the secrets to classic rock's continued success, much to the surprise of people, is that they get tired at some point of some of the repetition of the new music, and they get turned on to Led Zeppelin or the Beatles or whatever, and they go, wow, this is pretty good. But unfortunately, classic rock is screwing up too, in my opinion, in that by playing Metallica and Motley Crue and some of that ilk and some of the grunge, they're getting too young, and they're playing music that doesn't fit with Cream and Creedence Clearwater and Jimi Hendrix. It doesn't fit at all. And it doesn't even test well. So by doing that in an attempt to get younger, because the ad agencies want younger, they're screwing up their format, just like oldies was screwed up. There are basically no oldie stations anymore. They put them on an AM station or a translator, and they've tried to make that younger too. So, and of course, when PPM came along, that got rid of the smooth jazz format because it didn't work as well in that form of researching the audience. So this whole thing is opened up for all of us boomers and for me to do this and do it right.
So have you had any bites yet from any stations?
I've had bites. I've had what I call tire kickers that are very interested, and lots of people have shown interest. But the number one challenge that everybody brings up, because it's obvious, can you get the advertising agencies
to support it,
to open up their minds to realize this would be good for them too? The whole radio industry, and I assume maybe ad agencies are going, God, how do we make kind of money we need like we used to? Well, this is staring them in the face. You're not going after the largest demographic that has the most wealth. You're completely disregarding them. It's like so obvious that it's obviously getting me excited.
Right.
Because the potential is almost unlimited.
Sure. So as radio gets more and more digital and has more and more digital offerings, do you think this makes it harder or easier for programmers like you to sell your ideas? I mean, they can virtually have unlimited formats because they can just spin up another digital signal even.
Yeah. I don't even consider them, this might sound outrageous, but I don't even consider them because all I'm dealing with is the radio universe, because that's what the ratings are based on, and that's what our potential revenues will be based on. So by discounting them, I mean, yeah, they are succeeding in their own universe, but it's not the radio universe. So I'm only going after people that listen to radio or will listen to radio. And the second part of that is Spotify and Pandora, etc. You can't really do this on those stations because they're constantly giving you their idea of what you're talking about. You know, you put in Beatles in my life, and they don't give you Beatles in my life. They give you songs that they think you would like based on that. So you can't really do what I'm talking about here.
Right.
And the third thing is, especially this older demographic, would like very much for someone to put together a radio station where they don't have to do all that work. They can just listen to it for long periods of time. And that's what I've created.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited about this. And I think a lot of people are going to be excited as too. So if there are people who want to learn more about this 55 plus format, what's the best way to connect with you?
So we do have radio station people that listen to our show.
We actually do.
That'd be awesome. Before I give you the contact information, could I end with one thing?
Yes,
a stunning claim on my part. I believe that the hole is so wide for this that you could drive a truck through it, and that the potential in most markets, maybe not every single one, but most markets, is to be number one 6 plus. You guys know in
Sure.
the PPM world is the overall numbers now. And we're going to do that by so dominating 55 to 72, probably 70% loyalty in that demo. You can do the math because every other demo is so cut up with 4 ACs and 3 classic this and that and 3 top 40s and 3 alternatives that this will be sitting alone, dominating this huge demo. I'm completely convinced, because I'm a numbers person, that it could be number 1 overall in almost every market. So how do you contact me? Phone number and email. Should I give those to you?
Sure,
again,
and
or
we'll
do you
put,
have them?
yeah, go ahead and shoot them
Okay.
out to us, and we'll also put them in our show notes.
Yeah, it's 480-305-3962, and the email address is JOHN, S is in Sam, E is in Edward, B is in boy, and then the word voice @gmail.com. John Seb Voice @gmail.com.
Well, that's great, John. And if I could add this, I know in our market, in the last couple of years, we added an oldie station. And it has really, in your words, kicked ass here because,
Yeah.
it does kind of cater more to that 55 plus crowd, but it could do a lot better. And so I
What
think
is
we
it
have
on an FM station?
It is. It does quite well. In fact, it went to number 1. So
Yeah.
I think you have something here.
Does it have a full market competitive signal?
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's one of my particulars too. Lots of people have said, well, I'll put it on my AM station or some translator.
Right.
And I'm going, no way, because this has to pop big at the first one. So it has to be fully competitive and have all the potential in the world. And yeah, what I call a true oldie station should do very well in this direction too. But mine's better.
Yeah, I think you got a lot of potential here, John, and I wish you the best of luck. I really do. I'd like to be hearing it here in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I can't wait to follow your progress and where this goes. I think you're really onto something here. That's why I reached out. And you go back and there's proof of performance. I mean, back in the 80s, in the top 40, early 80s, when I was in radio, I mean, it was always trying to knock off WTMJ, which, we'd beat them in every demographic, but they owned 55 plus,
Exactly.
and then they owned 2 plus back then too, because if it had a plus on it, you couldn't compete.
That's right.
So
same thing when I was
Yep.
same thing when I was in Minneapolis at WCCO. They had like a 35 or 40 share. Well,
Sure.
we were number 2 in the market at KDWB, but a
Sure.
distant second.
Sure, and WGN in Chicago. I mean, you can just go down the list.
Yeah.
Whoever owned 55 plus owned the market.
Well, John, once you're rocking and rolling, follow up with us and tell us how things are going, okay?
I will. So kind of you to give me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, John.
And to our listeners, if you like what you've heard, please don't forget to share, review, and subscribe to Brandstorm.
This is Dan Trzynski, along with Nancy Christopher at Platypus Advertising and Design, an awesome company that creates perceptions that influence choice for a variety of regional, national, and even global brands on a daily basis. We hope you'll join us next week for another episode of Brandstorm.